Good afternoon and welcome back to Borderlines, the only show that takes you beyond borders. Today we turn our attention to a crisis that has shaken the moral conscience of the world, the war in Gaza. According to the Geneva Humanitarian Forum, famine is no longer a looming threat, but an unfolding catastrophe. Israel's bombardment has left vast swathes of the territory in ruins, while reports suggest plans to take full control of all of Gaza permanently, altering its demographic and political future. Today we have a special guest in the house. He's been here many times before. He is the Israeli ambassador to Nigeria, Ambassador Michael Freeman. Ambassador, welcome to Borderlines.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm pleased to be back.
Thank you for joining us. Please turn up my headphones. Yes, thank you for joining us. Let's get to it. I mean, first and foremost, I'm sure you've been listening to the show. We started the show with a minute of silence to my colleagues, my journalist colleagues in Gaza. What do you have to say about Israel's admission to assassinating 5 journalists in Gaza just this last week?
Well, I would say to you the following. If a terrorist is running guns inside an ambulance, that doesn't make them a paramedic. If somebody is firing rockets from inside a mosque, that doesn't make them an imam. If somebody is setting booby traps inside a school, it doesn't make them a journalist. And if somebody sticks the word press on the front of their body, it doesn't make them a journalist. And the reality is that the person that you're talking about, who was targeted in this attack, was a paid member of Hamas. He was one of the members of a rocket launching group and was a terrorist. And the fact that he decided to also write the word press on his flak jacket and pretend that he was a journalist does not make it so. The man was a terrorist. That's the information that we have. And therefore, we have to understand it in that context.
What evidence do you have to be able to label somebody a terrorist?
Well, the evidence that we've shown has been that he was very close to the Hamas leadership and was regularly meeting with the Hamas leadership. He was on the Hamas payroll. When he was buried with the Hamas flag. And that also we have evidence that he was involved in firing rockets at Israel as well.
What evidence? What evidence? I've got to ask what evidence. What evidence does Israel have to be able to label?
Well, I just told you.
No, but you haven't said anything. You haven't said much. You just said we've got evidence. Every evidence, if I may just say, Ambassador, pretty much all my colleagues who are not in Gaza, and I'm talking mainstream media, who are 9 out of 10 times speaking more, from the Israeli side, I've actually said, what is this evidence? Even Piers Morgan has said, what evidence? What evidence do you have?
Well, I just said to you, he was paid, he was on the Hamas payroll.
But you haven't shown us that. We can't take Israel's word for it.
He regularly met with the Hamas leadership.
How do we know that?
He posted it. If you have a look at his social media.
Well, I've seen the pictures, Ambassador.
He'll post it. Well,
I've seen the pictures. No, but I'm sorry, because I am a journalist and I'm hoping and expecting that you will facilitate my access into Gaza for me when Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu, announced that he's going to allow, 40 odd international journalists into Gaza. So I'm hoping, as you facilitated my entry into Israel, I'm hoping you'll be able to facilitate the same. So I've got to ask, because this is very close to my heart. And I can be biased about it. I'm not going to lie about it. It scares me because I am a journalist. So here's the thing. I have seen the pictures. I have seen pictures of Anais with Yahya Sinwar, with Hamas. Those pictures were before October 7th, were they not?
Well, I don't have the exact dates in front of me, but I think you're right, by the way. You should absolutely be worried as a journalist that Hamas are cynically using the idea of journalism and putting real journalists in danger. They are taking people who were not journalists but are pretending to be journalists. And then when Israel eliminates them, we have real journalists saying, oh dear, this is very worrying, as you should be worried if you think that we're targeting journalists. But the reality is we're not. This man was a terrorist. This man was on the payroll of Hamas. He was involved in rocket launches on Israel. And we've seen that this is not the first time.
Ambassador, I have to interrupt you. You are repeating the same point over and over and over again without actually answering the question. You have produced pictures. I've seen the pictures online, right? Now, let me give you an example. The current president of Syria, who was an Al-Qaeda, head of an Al-Qaeda, has taken pictures with President Donald Trump. Does that make Donald Trump a terrorist? I've interviewed journalists all the time. We interview people who we don't necessarily agree with, but you will go into the office of most journalists and you will see the pictures of people there, them take pictures with people they have interviewed. I have been to Israel. Are you saying that Hamas will kill me because I've been to Israel and I took pictures in Israel? We've got to actually take this beyond just Israel says. What Israel hasn't been able to do is to provide real evidence. Because unless you provide real evidence, you could very well as well call me a terrorist. In fact, you can say Ireti is a member of Boko Haram because she interviewed Boko Haram, and that's that. We can't do that.
Okay, but look, we're going around in circles, and if you want to spend the entire hour going backwards and forwards,
well, it's not that you've spent the last 15 minutes repeating the same thing without. I've asked, what evidence do you have, and you have not answered.
I have to be honest. I'm not convinced we need to carry on the interview. It's a shame.
Why is that?
Because I told you. Well, I'll tell you why. Because I told you what the evidence is. You don't want me to keep telling you what the evidence is. I don't have his payslip in front of me. That's obvious. You don't expect me to have his payslip in front of me.
Have you seen the payslip though?
You don't expect me. You don't expect me to be able to show you the exact picture of him launching the rocket. You don't expect me to be able to release my sources. When we kill journalists by accident, when a journalist has been killed, we admit it, we put our hands up and we say, we're terribly sorry, it's a terrible tragedy, it shouldn't have happened, and we're very, very sorry. In this instance, we're saying the man wasn't a journalist. We're saying he was a terrorist.
Okay, let's take it further. If you kill journalists by accident, you apologize. Anas is the only person Israel is accusing of being a terrorist. However, you killed 5 journalists. It wasn't just Anas. 5 journalists who were in the press tents, whom you, Israel, have not accused of being members of Hamas. You have no accusation on those people. Yet, not once has Israel even so much as acknowledged the killing of the other the other 4 journalists. Let's talk about Shireen, the Palestinian American who was killed 3-4 years ago. I mean, we see this all the time. What I'm saying is, Ambassador Freeman, when Israel points a finger at anybody, and this is it, if you, Ambassador, decide to point the finger at me, Ireti Bakare-Yusuf, and you say I am a terrorist, it would not matter if I say I am not. Because literally, permit me to finish. Because that's literally, I'm talking if I was a Palestinian, that's literally the equivalent of putting a target on my back. And that's why I'm asking these things.
Okay, so firstly, that's a ridiculous accusation. It's an outrageous accusation. It's got absolutely no basis in fact whatsoever. You brought up the case of Shireen. As you know, we apologized. We said it was that the evidence is still not clear exactly what happened, but we certainly did not want her to be killed. It was a terrible accident. We don't know exactly who it was who killed her yet, but certainly we are very, very upset by that fact. Okay, that's a very clear statement that we are not accusing her of being a terrorist in any way whatsoever. Okay, we are talking about Anas as being a terrorist. So if I'm happy for you to make accusations, but they should at least be backed up by some form of evidence.
Okay, what
as
about the
opposed
other
to the
four?
other four people,
What's
as
of the other
opposed
four?
to the other four, as opposed to the other four people in there, we're still carrying out our investigation. Initial investigation says at least one of them we believe was also a terrorist. We're checking into the others. And if they weren't terrorists, then that's terrible. That's a terrible situation. But as I said to you, this is a case of people who are terrorists dressing up as journalists and endangering real journalists because they are blurring the lines between journalists and terrorists. They are blurring the line between doctors and terrorists. They're blurring the line between everybody and terrorists because that's what Hamas do. They dress up as other people, they dress up as all sorts of others, and then they abuse the position. We know that somebody who claimed to be a journalist was physically holding 3 of our hostages. Our hostages came back and said, we were held by journalists. They identified the man, and it was proven that he was somebody who claimed to be a journalist and was not a journalist. He was a terrorist. And that's the reality that we're dealing with.
Right. So let me go back. Now you've accused a second journalist of being a terrorist. Over 200 journalists have been killed in Gaza. Is every one of them? Is it 50 of them? Is it 20 of them? How many of them? How many of the over 20 journalists that Israel has killed in Gaza can Israel, hand on heart, say we have evidence that they are members of Hamas?
So firstly, I reject the statement that we've killed all the journalists. You are the number of journalists have been killed. The number of journalists have been killed is even up for dispute. The 220 figure. Firstly, 220.
Well, I said upwards of 20, 200 rather.
Okay,
that's what I said. Sorry.
The figure of 220 that you're providing is a figure provided by Hamas. The Center for Protection of Journalism issues the number at 180, but that's not the point. We believe that approximately 50 of those we've found evidence so far of not being journalists, but rather being terrorists. And the others, we don't know who killed them, whether it was Israel, whether it was Hamas, whether it was Islamic Jihad, whether it was falling rockets, whatever it might have been. And this is unfortunately in a war what happens. We know that Hamas have killed many Palestinians. We know that Hamas have killed anybody who speaks up against them, including journalists and media who have said out and they've identified Hamas of carrying out actions, and they've been beaten or they've been killed by Hamas.
Okay.
But unfortunately, in any war, journalists are killed. There's never been a war when journalists haven't been killed.
Well, exactly. But
job.
Incidentally, if I may just come in there, and that is a good point you make, because incidentally, this is the one conflict that has killed more journalists than any other conflict. Any other conflict. Permit me. It is true. It is true, Ambassador. I'm sorry, it is true. Unless you are able to provide evidence to the contrary, I would rather listen to the president of the International Federation of Journalists, Dominic Pradley, who you are listening to, than actually you, who is an ambassador, because you are not an independent mind. So it is true, right? It is true. Israel,
I'll give you your facts.
Permit me. I've got. So okay, go ahead, and then I'll give you my facts.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So the statement that was being made is based on a study that was made from Brown. The study is full of holes, and I'll give you a couple of statistics which will show you how ridiculous the statement is that was made. Firstly, according to the Committee on the Freedom of Press, 717 journalists were killed in the Syria conflict. 260 were killed in Iraq. In the Second World War, just in Hiroshima alone, over 110 were killed in one
This
newspaper.
is frankly not true, sir. I'm sorry, Ambassador, this is not true. Okay. I have the figures here. 69 journalists killed in 1939 to 45. Vietnam, 1955 to 75. 63 journalists killed. Gaza, October 2023. Israel,
please listen.
Go ahead, Ambassador.
Listen. Okay. So I know the survey you're referring to. Because somebody wrote it, it doesn't make it true. I'll give you two sources, and with pleasure, please look them up. Don't take my word for it. Look them up now. Look up the Rossiyka Gazeta. It's a Russian newspaper. It claims, and it held a memorial each year for 1,500 Russian journalists, that were killed during the Second World War. Have a look on the Yad Vashem site, which is the site that records all of the Holocaust victims. They have got 1,490 Jewish journalists in the Yiddish press who were murdered during the Holocaust by the Nazis. They've got that number. If you have a look on the Committee for the Freedom of the Press, they have got a list of 717. Do a Google search now. Ask any one of your research assistants. Do a Google search now. How many journalists killed in Syria? 717. How many journalists were killed in Iraq? 260. So this survey is blatantly wrong. It's outrageous that they've managed to put this out there. Just because they
Who
lied
is they,
doesn't
though?
make it
Who
true.
is they?
But it was
Because
published by
the
Brown.
president.
Have a look. It's the Brown.
Yeah, but
the Brown survey.
But hold on, Ambassador. The president of the International Federation of Journalists is a French woman. She's not Hamas. She's not even
But that's what
Palestinian.
she's using.
Permit me, Dominic Pradley. No, I'm afraid no, it is not. She's been doing this for decades. You cannot say that is what she's using. But alas, let's move on.
Well, no, don't move on. You've got a research assistant there.
They can hear you. They can hear you. I've asked them to do that.
Ask the research assistant to do a Google search. Number of journalists killed in Iraq.
They can hear you.
707 in Syria. Sorry, in Syria.
Over how many years? Over how many years? Over how many years? Well, it does matter because October 7th was only 22 months ago.
Well, hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. Don't change the goalpost.
I am not changing the goalpost.
You said to me that this war has killed more journalists than any other war. And I'm saying to you, that's not true. Okay. We know. I've given you two figures.
My researchers are listening and they will find it.
3,000 in the Second World War. We have shown you 717 killed in Syria. We've shown you 260 killed in Iraq. And I haven't even started. So the numbers are demonstrably ridiculous and clearly based on I'm not sure what they're based on, but they're not based on any sort of fact. And if you don't believe me, I'll happily send you the link.
Ambassador, you promise to always send me something every time we interview.
Okay, if you would like to take a break,
access. If you would like we can't take a break. I can't. You can't produce me. We can't take a break. We only have defined time. But I would appreciate it if after every show, whenever we have a show, you always promise to send me something, and you never do. Your PA has my number, right?
Please send something.
Your PA has my number.
1 second. Please send to Zamswat an email address or a phone number or WhatsApp.
She has it. She has it. Well, I've always contacted you through Zamswat, but alas, I have to move on because we are losing time.
And you will see
we are losing time.
Okay, well, let's move on.
We have to move on. So let's talk about famine. GHF. Why are people dying in Gaza? Why are people dying in Gaza? Because they are queuing up for food. Indeed, why are people being killed in Gaza? Because they are queuing up for food. Why is it that some 1,838 civilians, many children, have been killed and over 13,000 injured while seeking food at GHF sites? Why is that?
Well, so if you ask the GHF, the GHF will tell you absolutely nobody has been killed. The numbers that you are taking from are Hamas numbers and Hamas statistics. You would need to ask Hamas why it is that they are killing people who go towards the GHF site. The answer is, by the way, that the GHF, which is the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, this is a place that is handing out free food and is not handing it out through Hamas or through
Anthony Aguilera doesn't work for Hamas. Anthony Aguilera, if I'm pronouncing his name right, he doesn't work for Hamas. He worked for GHF. And Anthony Aguilera, I beg your pardon. He worked for GHF. And he has testified, beg your pardon, he has testified that, and he said it on so many sites on CNN, he's gone everywhere, saying he is an American that was working with GHF. One of the things he said is he was shocked that they only went in with a tourist visa. Number one. Number two, he was shocked about the way people were being killed. In fact, he talked about a particular little boy that he saw being shot. And I'm paraphrasing him here. One of the things he also said is where it's not a bullet, they use tear gas shots. He's not Hamas. Let's not bring Hamas into GHF. It is not Hamas. We have several, I beg your pardon, even today, just today, Channel 4, you are British and I'm British. And I'm sure we both watch British news as well whenever we can on YouTube or whatever. Channel 4, I believe it was, or was it ITV News, actually have a whistleblower from GHF who did not show their face, who had to be interviewed, right, as a whistleblower without showing their identity, who confirmed all the pictures and the videos we've been seeing, who also doctors have said the same thing. None of them have said Hamas. It is always Israel. Whenever Israel is blamed for something, Hamas is blamed. But let's talk about what Israel is responsible for. Is Israel responsible? Does Israel take responsibility for anything at all? Anything to do with the civilians? Do they? Okay, Hamas is bad. Let's take that as a given. Does Israel take responsibility for anything at all to do with civilians?
Okay. Well, if I be allowed to answer without you interrupting me this time, I would say to you this. Hamas, as you said, is not just they're bad, let's put that to the side. They're evil. They're a terror organization who want to see the Palestinian people suffering in Gaza. The more the Palestinian people suffer in Gaza, the better that is for Hamas. Hamas want them to suffer, want them to die. They don't want them to get food. They want to stop the
Ambassador,
food.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you because you are, look, New York Times, permit me. New York Times said, no evidence. This is the New York Times. No evidence. Permit me. No, I'm not going to regret it. I'm not going to regret it. And you will not tell me what I will regret because we have to have this frank conversation, Ambassador. New York Times, no evidence of Hamas stealing aid. USAID did a study that shows no evidence of Hamas stealing aid. The EU did the same and showed no evidence of Hamas stealing aid. Everybody is always wrong.
Well,
as far as Israel is concerned, you keep telling us about, permit me, you keep going back to us about Hamas. And I'm saying to you, I'm not here to tell you, to argue with you that Hamas is not evil. All the talking points of Hamas, we've heard it. What I am asking you for is, what exactly does Israel take responsibility for in this humanitarian catastrophe that's killing civilians?
Okay. I genuinely, I enjoy coming on this program. I don't know at this point there's much point in carrying on. And I'll explain to you why. Because at this point, you're not even letting me finish a sentence. Every time I try and go through an explanation, you cut me off, and you're going to do it again.
Because you keep giving us the same story, Ambassador.
There you go. I'm sorry, but either you let me speak.
But I think it's a strategy. You're giving us a strategy. There is clearly a strategy. Because I allow people to talk on this show, Ambassador, I have to be honest with you. You repeat the same thing over and over again without answering my question.
I haven't even had a chance to say anything.
But you have.
Look, I haven't. Okay, so I'm actually, I enjoy coming on this program.
And I enjoy having you here.
I'm going to give it one more chance, and then I'm going to say, look, it's a shame, and I'm going to go away. Because I haven't come on this program for you to sit there and talk to me nonstop and not allow me to answer. So allow me to answer and allow me to answer fully. And if you allow me to answer fully, I'm then happy to have another conversation and then have another question. This is not a debate. You're meant to be interviewing, you're meant to be asking me questions. So now let's talk about the aid. Okay, let's not worry about what the New York Times said or what this one said or what that one said. Let's look at the UN figures. No one else's figures other than the United Nations. The United Nations published figures for May of the amount of aid that was put into Gaza. 87% of the aid that went through of the trucks was stolen, according to the United Nations. Not according to me, not according to the New York Times, not according to anyone else, according to the United Nations. The United Nations' own data says that in May, 87% of all of the aid sent into Gaza was stolen. Of all of the trucks, only 103 got to where they were going. All of the others were stolen. The same figures are on for June as well. So if you want to look at it, look up the UN figures, not from anybody else. The UN admit it. Their aid is being stolen. 87 to 93%, depending on which month, is being stolen when it goes in and doesn't get to the UN bodies. If you want to know who is causing food problems in Gaza, it is Hamas. Yesterday, over 300 trucks of food went in. I haven't got the statistics yet of how many were stolen, but there's a good chance that a significant number was stolen. Hamas are using the aid, they are using it as weapon, they are using it in other ways, and they are stealing the aid from their own people.
Okay. One of the things that has come out is that the food that is being, the aid that is being stolen is being stolen by gangs linked to Israel. And, I've asked my researcher to get me the name. I think he's Al Sharaf. I can't remember his name. And that was even admitted to by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But I will bring that out hopefully before this is gone, because I had to let you
speak.
speak.
At the same time, have a look at the UN statistics. If you're
I've asked them to. They can hear you.
Research on the UN.
They can hear you. I can do. They're doing that, so we'll be able to do both. Now, here's the thing. Let's talk about this food then. Gazans are hungry. Would you accept that?
I don't accept there's hunger in Gaza. I think there are some people may be hungry, but there is no widespread hunger in Gaza. The only people who are hungry in Gaza and are starving in Gaza are the Israeli hostages being held by Hamas. And we saw the pictures that Hamas put out. I'm sure you must have seen them. You do so much research on this. The pictures of Evyatar and Ran, who looked like, the only way to describe them is Holocaust survivors, who looked, I can't even describe it. And they were forced to dig their own graves. And you see in the video, the arm of the Hamas terrorist that reaches across. His arm goes there to give him food. And that arm is thick, it's fat, it's healthy. The only people who we see starving and dying in these pictures are the Israeli hostages who are being starved to death.
Again, I did see the picture. Bale, as we would say, I'm sure you know what bale means by now. You've been in Nigeria for so long. Bale, when you're coughing, it means sorry. I've seen the picture that you're referring to, the video that you're referring to, and it was incredibly shocking. That very same video or the picture of the Israeli hostage that was released by Hamas is actually no different to all the Palestinians or the Gazan, the videos, the pictures from from Gazan civilians that we've seen from Gaza. We have seen babies. We have seen, I find it quite incredible, Ambassador, that you say there is no hunger in Gaza. How could you say that? How could you say there's no hunger in Gaza? Because if I remember rightly, if it's the same person, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the Israeli hostage who Hamas showed as being hungry, we saw him some months back, and he was more full-bodied. It's the same hostage, right? Am I right or wrong? I've forgotten his name now. The same hostage.
He was, to starve somebody to that level takes years, and that's what they've done. And
right.
A few months ago, he had more fat, but that's not even like as much as when he was taken.
Right.
He's being starved over a period of time.
Right.
If we go through a period of time, you will see him get thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner from the day he was captured and kidnapped.
Right. Okay. So this is the thing. I remember what is his name. I think his name is Dr. I've got to try and remember his name now. Dr. Nick Maynard. Dr. Nick Maynard was interviewed, and he's British. He's been going to Gaza for some 15 years, I think he said. One of the things he talked about yesterday on his last interview was, he said, but I'm surprised that we're only hearing about malnutrition now. He said, we were talking malnutrition a year ago. I saw malnutrition a year ago. He said that. He said, I saw adults and I saw children, and they couldn't eat. I mean, they couldn't heal because they were malnourished. I'm trying to find I'm trying to find this quote here because I remember writing it down. So he's not Hamas. He's saying, and he said he's surprised that the malnourished, the story of malnourishment in Gaza is only just coming out now.
Okay.
Would Dr. Nick
So,
Maynard be lying?
So let me point this out. A couple of things. Firstly, the photos that you talk about is obviously the famous one on the front page of the New York Times of the child that was
Not at all.
severely thin.
Not at all.
We saw. Well, you said the photos that are there. I can tell
Photos.
you
There's an S,
the photos
not a singular.
There was one. Well, let me finish again. There was a photo on the Daily Express. There was a photo in a number of different photos of children. We're talking about children's. One of them had cerebral palsy. One of them had another genetic disease. They doctored. The photo was doctored. The brother was standing next to them, and the brother was cut out of the photo. The New York Times has actually apologized, saying that they didn't put the context that there was his healthy brother standing by, that was not malnutrition, that was not thin, and this child had actually been treated, and this child had a rare generic disease that caused him to look like that. So that's on the first thing. The second thing is this: you see pictures from Gaza. Look, we both live in Africa. Okay, we live in Africa, and we know what's happened to the African continent. If we sent a photographer to Sudan, or we send a photographer to other parts in Africa where there's real famine, the photographer or the cameraman can take photos in any direction, anywhere you go, and you will see thin, emaciated people. In Gaza, that's not the case. You talked about the people who are having demonstrations or standing in line or walking around. They don't look thin.
Yes, they do, actually, Ambassador.
They don't.
I'm afraid no.
Sir,
Ambassador, I've got to say this. I think it's dystopian, and quite frankly, we've come to a place where dehumanization must be the new order. When we start describing because people are thin, you say, or because people look a particular way, you say they are not hungry. I'm afraid I can't.
I didn't say they're not hungry.
No, but you said there's no hunger in Gaza.
No,
you
I said no.
It is widely.
For a second,
Go ahead.
I'm not going to say there's no hunger. There obviously is hunger, but there is no starvation and there is no famine. There's a difference. There is hunger, and the hunger is caused by Hamas controlling the aid and stealing the aid.
Okay.
Israel is not. There is no limit. Let me be very clear. There is absolutely no limit whatsoever on the amount of aid they may be sent into Gaza. Anyone can send any amount of aid via the border or through arranged airdrops. Any amount of aid may be sent in that is coordinated with us, and that is not a problem. 300 trucks went in yesterday. There are hundreds of truckloads of food at the border waiting to be collected. There is no problem with allowing aid in. There is no limit. There is a pause every day between 10 and 8 to allow the aid to come through. There is a military pause to allow the aid to come through. 87% is being stolen, but it is not. We are allowing as much in as that. There is no limit whatsoever.
Ambassador, who is Abu Shabab?
Sorry?
Abu Shabab. Who is Abu Shabab?
Well, Abu Shabab is one of the groups that operates in Gaza.
Right. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, has admitted to supporting armed groups in Gaza that oppose Hamas. These groups, led by individuals like Yasser Abu Shabab, have been involved in various criminal activities, such as drug smuggling. Netanyahu's decision to arm these groups has been met with controversy, with some viewing it as a strategy to weaken Hamas, while others see it as a potentially catastrophic move. That is from Grok. It is not from me. It is not from my researchers. It is from Grok. That's what Grok informed when I asked Grok who is Abu Shabab and what is the relation with Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, again, one of the things you said was Hamas was stealing the food. However, we know that Abu Shabab was stealing the food. Interestingly, even more so, here is Grok telling us that the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, has admitted to supporting armed gangs in Gaza that oppose Hamas, including groups led by individuals such as Yasser Abu Shabab. So how is it that Israel can then say, you know, we're letting food when the Prime Minister back in March admitted to blocking aid? The Prime Minister said because Hamas was not agreeing to a ceasefire, they were going to block aid from getting into Gaza. I mean, the one thing is when people keep saying Israel, and I do argue this, and of course I'll allow you to come in. When people keep saying Israel doesn't tell the truth, I ask them, who is listening when Israel does tell us the truth and that truth becomes apparent?
Well, hang on a minute. Israel tells the truth. The fact that you don't like it and you prefer to listen to Hamas sources or Hamas
Is
information
Hamas?
is not something. One second. The fact that you prefer to listen to Hamas sources most of the time when you come to that. And for me, the biggest example of this is we've spent 40 minutes talking and we still haven't talked about the hostages. We still haven't talked about how we're going to end this war. We haven't talked about the way this war started, all of those things. And that's the fundamental piece here. And that reveals a lot about the direction of the conversation. But the reality is this, that yes, Israel is looking for alternative ways to distribute that aid, to distribute the aid in a way that bypasses Hamas, because Hamas used the aid in order to control the population. They used it to raise money. They used it to fund their terror network. They used it to recruit terrorists. And that's why they're stealing the aid. And we are looking for any other way of providing aid to a population that needs it. And we've looked at all sorts of different options to do that in order to bypass Hamas. And those people who say you're not getting enough aid can't then say to us, well, you're trying different ways of getting the aid. We don't want that either. It cannot be that the only way to provide aid is via Hamas. That's unacceptable. It's ridiculous. And the world should be welcoming the opportunity for us to bypass Hamas, because the only way this war will ever finish is when Hamas are removed from power, when Hamas lay down their arms, when Hamas release the hostages, and they agree that they will no longer be part of Gaza's future. And when that happens, there will be the end of the war. Israel has no interest in being in Gaza. We do not want to be there. Prime Minister Netanyahu said very, very clearly last week, we do not want to be in Gaza. We have no interest in being there permanently. We want to go in. We want to be there till there's an alternative body that can run the Gaza Strip that is not Hamas, and we want our hostages back. Okay. All of this can end. All of this can end immediately, tomorrow morning, when Hamas release our hostages, they lay down their arms and they relinquish power.
Excellent. We must talk about the hostages, and I'll give you a quote because it's always important to talk about hostages. The former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, has said the military actions in Gaza are now, quote, totally unjustified and have nothing to do with the security of Israel. There are hostage families who are every single day or every other day protesting and demanding that their family members be put first. Indeed, there are Israelis who appear to care very much about the hostages, much more than the government. They are out protesting and demanding every day that Israeli hostages, be made primary and priority. I had Rachel Shabi here, and I'm sure you know Rachel Shabi. Rachel Shabi was here last week, and she agrees to the same. So indeed, it will appear that everybody, including myself, including the media, including those in Israel, ordinary Israeli citizens, care very much about the hostages. However, the government of Israel don't appear to be putting the hostages first. And this is the issue here. This is something we must talk about. And I'm sorry, Ambassador, I understand you work for a government, and it's hard for you to say anything against your government. But honestly, Ambassador, there is no more excuse. There's no other reason for those hostages to still remain in Gaza. You've got to accept that.
Well, I accept there is no reason for those hostages to remain in Gaza. Hamas needs to release them. I remind you, we were very, very close to a ceasefire deal, and it was Hamas that walked away. You don't need to believe me. Ask the Qataris, ask the Egyptians, ask the Americans who were brokering a deal, and they were the ones who said Hamas have walked away from a ceasefire. We were days away, hours away from a ceasefire a few weeks ago, and Hamas walked away. Hamas aren't interested in a ceasefire. Hamas don't want it. And you're right, there are hostage families that are out every single day protesting, saying they want their loved ones back. And they're saying that they think that moving in the military forward is a mistake. There are also hostages families who are saying that they think that having any agreement with Hamas is a mistake and that we need to have total surrender. So if we're going to talk about hostage families, we need to look at the both views. Neither of us, thank God, are in a position where we've got family members who have been held for 700 days in a tunnel, being starved, being beaten, being tortured by Hamas terrorists, by these evil people who are beating and doing what they're doing to these people. Their families, some of them are calling for Israel to go even further. Some are calling for a ceasefire. But ultimately, if the other side doesn't want a ceasefire, if Hamas won't have a ceasefire, if Hamas says no, 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 then there's no possibility in ending the war and having a ceasefire. Israel, if tomorrow Israel left Gaza, the hostages won't be free. Hamas won't release the hostages. Hamas won't lay down their arms. And another October the 7th will happen in a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it will be. The answer isn't. No one has given me an answer. Nobody, including yourself, including anybody, has given me an answer of how we get the hostages back without Hamas agreeing to it. And Hamas are not prepared to do it. We can't get them back. And therefore, the only way to get them back is through military means, putting pressure on Hamas and doing what we need to do in order to get those people back. And that's what we're doing.
Do you accept that when Israel says it's putting pressure on Hamas, civilians get killed? Palestinian Gazan civilians. But let's talk about what you said earlier. You said about...
Well, I'll answer that question.
Okay, if you could do that quickly, because we're running out of time.
I will do.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in any war, civilians get killed. And civilians is a tragic. And Hamas are living within civilian populations. They're hiding in schools. They're hiding in mosques. They're hiding in apartment buildings. They are hiding behind civilians. They don't wear military uniforms. They dress as civilians. They booby trap. They booby trap houses. They work out of schools and mosques and everywhere. And unfortunately, when you're fighting an enemy like that, and everybody knows this, Nigeria knows this fighting Boko Haram, America knows this from Iraq, we know this from Afghanistan, we know this all over the world, that civilians die. In fact, the United Nations say...
you said you would answer this quickly, Ambassador.
I am. In a conflict, the average in an urban conflict, on average, 9 civilians die for every combatant killed. In this case, in Israel, we believe the ratio is 1 to 1. It will be the lowest civilian casualty in history. And unfortunately, civilians die. My heart bleeds for civilians.
I can't, sir, I'm running out of time. You did promise. You talked about, there's a quote that I want to give you again from Dr. Nick Maynard. And he said, one day at the end of May, around the 3rd week, which was a Saturday evening, 4 young teenage boys must have been between 13 and 14, came in. They had been shot in the testicles. This cluster of injury was so striking that the number on some days was so great that it was inconceivable that they were a coincidence. What do you have to say to that, sir?
Well, I would need to see information and who carried this out, but the Israeli army doesn't do this. The Israeli army doesn't do that. I do not believe that is happening. I believe that is a false allegation. And if it did happen, I want the information, because in Israel that is illegal. If soldiers were to have done that, they will be tried and they will be put in prison, as opposed to Hamas, who celebrate rape and pillaging and raping women and sexually abusing women and using. Well,
we keep going on about Massa. Let me come back. Yeah, let's go back, because this is why I always have to interrupt you, because we know how Israel feels about Hamas. The questions I was asking wasn't to do with Hamas; it was to do with what Dr. Nick Maynard. But permit me. Let's talk about Sudan. Why is Israel planning to expel ethnically cleanse Gaza by expelling Palestinians or Gazans to South Sudan?
We're not.
Really?
Yeah, we're not.
So
I don't know where this has come from, but let me be very, very clear.
Right.
Our policy is very, very clear. If some Palestinian wishes to voluntarily leave Gaza, and there are countries that wish to accept them, then we're certainly not going to stop them. If somebody wants to leave Nigeria and there's a country willing to accept them, then they're allowed to do that.
But no, I'm afraid you can't keep using. No, you can't. I can't. You see, this is why I must interrupt you. When you use Nigeria as an example, it's a false equivalent because the Palestinians are under Israeli occupation. Nigeria is a sovereign nation.
You asked me a question.
Yeah, but when you keep using Nigeria.
Okay, so take Nigeria out of the equation.
Anyone
in the world who wants to go to and live in another country and the other country will accept them has the right to do that. Would you agree with me?
Well, that would not be under occupation. So you see,
hang on a minute,
permits me, because I'm the one that asked the question, but I'm giving you the respect of answering your question. Let's talk about that question you ask. Permit me to finish, please.
If somebody from Gaza wishes to leave, somebody from Gaza, a Palestinian, says to you, I want to leave Gaza with my family, and I'd like to go to another country, country A, country B, country C, whatever. Country A, B, or C is willing to accept me, and I'd like to go. Who are we to say no to them?
Well, no, but there's a guy called Joe Slavic, the founder of a U.S. lobbying firm working with South Sudan. And he said he was briefed by South Sudanese officials on the talks. He said an Israeli delegation plans to visit the country to look into the possibility of setting up camps for Palestinians there. Now, by coincidence, the Israeli the foreign minister, Sharon, I believe her name is, and I can't remember her surname, has been in Juba. She just returned from Juba. Juba is in South Sudan. Is that really a coincidence, Ambassador? Are we supposed to believe that? No, permit me. Are we supposed to believe that Israel is not on a tour?
Funny thing.
Incidentally, she came to Nigeria, and you didn't tell me.
Okay, so she came to Nigeria. Deputy Minister Sharon Heskel was in Nigeria for very constructive, very positive bilateral dialogue with Nigeria. And the next day, she flew to Juba in South Sudan for conversations there about a number of issues, including opening a trauma unit and various other aid programs that we were looking at. Yes, it's a coincidence. And I'll stress again and hear me very clearly, nobody is being forced to leave Gaza. If Gazans wish to leave, and there is a country that's willing to accept them, we will allow them to do so. We will not force anyone to leave. That is not our policy. We won't allow it to happen.
Yet, Gazans that wanted to leave before October the 7th were not allowed to leave. Indeed, when Israel left Gaza, Israel bombed the airport. Gazans couldn't even go to the West Bank to go and visit family. Gazans, permit me to finish, Ambassador. What you're saying is if Gazans want to leave, they can leave. You're not going to stop them. That's fine. If you weren't going to stop them, why then didn't you allow them the freedom to leave Gaza before October 7th? Why is it now, all of a sudden, 22 months after Gaza has been leveled, that you are now giving them the permission, the license to leave, but you claim you're not forcing them?
As I'm sure you know, the only international border that Gaza has with a country is Egypt as well, and Egypt has a border, and Egypt refused to allow Gazans to leave. So I suggest you. And
Israel doesn't allow Gazans to go to the West Bank.
1 second. I suggest you call the Egyptian ambassador and ask him why it was that Egypt wouldn't allow Gazans to leave Gaza and go into Egypt.
And Israel doesn't allow Gazans to go to the West Bank. You talk about Egypt, why not?
Because the West Bank is not an independent country. The West Bank is a territory under Israeli control at the moment.
Because it has now been occupied by... because it has now been occupied.
Well, hang on a minute. And under Palestinian Authority control, and the Palestinian Authority also doesn't want the Gazans coming. So
this is actually not true. This is actually not true. So anyway. it actually isn't true, Ambassador. You have Benjamin, what's his name? Smotrich. He said something. He said he has support from Benjamin Netanyahu to actually cut off to end the idea of a Palestinian state. And he said that is the fact on the ground, that anybody that has an idea to actually implement a Palestinian state. So what is and I need to go to the calls, and I'm coming to your calls, please. Pardon me. I need you to talk to us. What is the E1 plan? Tell us what is it.
First of all, the Prime Minister of Israel is Prime Minister Netanyahu and not Bezalel Smotrich.
But it doesn't matter. They're part of the same government.
But hang on a minute. So in any country in the world, we have to listen to any minister that says anything and not the Prime Minister. Of course not. There are lots of people who say things. If
I have the Foreign Minister of Nigeria here, everything he says is a representative of the Nigerian government. So why is it always different for Israel?
I'm not going to go into details, but I think everybody knows that there are times when every minister says things that aren't representative of the government policy. But that's besides the point. Okay. Prime Minister Netanyahu is the Prime Minister. Prime Minister Netanyahu made clear what the policy. But if you're going to ask about a Palestinian state, I remind you, in 2005, Israel left the Gaza Strip.
Yes.
The Palestinians had an opportunity to show us what they thought the Palestinian state would look like. And they showed us what a Palestinian state would look like. And we got October the 7th, and we had thousands of our people murdered,
I think raped, that's rather short.
And kidnapped.
Okay, I'm going to go to the calls. Hello, very quickly. Very, very quickly. I've got to close.
I have a question to the ambassador.
Very quickly.
Yes, so you say Hamas has given wrong figures about the casualty of civilians. All right, because they hide in civilians.
You are not. Hurry up. Ask your question, please. I've literally got seconds.
Is there a way Israel can limit the casualties of...
Sorry, people, I have to go. Ambassador, as usual, you and I have these conversations, and it is always spirited. We'll become...
I'm going to send you...
.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99